our last presenter, came from the Web 3, kind of explaining the world of Web 2, and I'm kind of doing the opposite, doing Web 2 to Web 3. My background is I was employee number 1 at Wasabi. Back when our previous company was Carbonite, I worked with the founders of Wasabi to develop and ideate and go to market a object solution, competing with Amazon and all the hyperscalers. At the time, everyone thought we were insane. They said it's impossible to compete with these walled-garden approaches, and we found our little niche, just like mentioned before, and we were successful. And so I figured for this conversation here, at first I was going to do things about designing durability and availability, but then I realized that I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. Everyone here is in the storage providing landscape, and they know all about that. So I thought I'd just drill into kind of my knowledge of these key use cases at Wasabi and kind of drill into what their requirements are, what they see as their motivations, and we can go from there. So yeah, I mean, for us, the main things we came into at launch were application backends. When you have a disruptive price for S3, everyone wants to go in there, whether it is a website or if it is a video streaming service. Everyone seems to really be appealed by the fact that you have no egress and you have really cheap storage, which is great at the beginning when you're first getting started. You want to get any sort of, petabyte possible, but as you get older and older and older, you kind of reap your sins in terms of having to support those things long term. So you have to figure out solutions for that. Second one is business continuity and backup. So this is an interesting market too. I'll go into more details about. Business continuity is, it's basically RTO and RPO, which is basically the time of if your system fails, how to get back going. A lot of people, a lot of companies, enterprises have a bunch of use cases. I'll go into more details about that. We can kind of, talk about that some more. And third, my favorite, archival. Now, archival is easy, simple. It's a place where you store large amounts of data as quick as possible and for as cheap as possible with, added functionality that, a good archival use case actually intends to use the data sometime, not just store and forget about it, but let's say you get sued and get audited, or you need to, redo some large data for large language models. You'll want to get that data back and actually analyze it and do works with that. So how to compete that against the hyperscalers where they have all the compute built in. That's a fun conversation. So yeah, like I said before, and you'll see examples here, and these may or may not have been customers that we first had a launch of Wasabi, but like something similar to that. Car trader website. So like I said before, these are thousands of pages, hundreds of thousands of images, storing tons of them, and the problem with this application use case is they want the flows back immediately. So that's hot storage. That is quite the process to maintain hot and then serve locally. Not to mention the bandwidth for that. And another good example here of use case is independent video streamer. If you offer hot storage and no egress fees, you're going to get them. Every country in the world wants to have the next Netflix and next that, and for every niche market. So you'll be popping those up. That's an example of backend use cases. And yeah, so for these ones, the key things is that it's both high durability and availability requirements, which is fun. 11.9's durability, fast retrieval, and fast bandwidth. And that's key here too for these ones, is that if you have a lot of these, they're going to swamp your network. You're going to fill up every single, a gigabit of bandwidth, causing enormous issues there. So it's hard to maintain revenue streams with that. And then 99.99% uptime. They expect it to always be up. If it goes down, they go down. So they get very litigious if you ever do not do that.
Do you mind if I ask?
Oh yeah, please, engage.
Okay. So with this, it sounds like you're saying, like the local Netflix, that you're going to have a hard time making money from this because your egress costs as a provider are going to very quickly escalate to an unmanageable point.
Exactly. And that's the thing we found out when we did large scale, hot storage, is that you're going to get these customers that really see the advantage of, wait, I can utilize the system to my own advantage, such as like video streaming. So you want to have ways to motivate people to not do that, whether it be fair use policies or more details of, governation in terms of, appropriately.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the expectations there, the standard ones, erasure coding for durability. Amazon doesn't mention that they do this, but we know Wasabi does, we know Backblaze does, standard sharding across 20 drives. Again, preaching to choir here, a bunch of storage providers, a bunch of people there, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. tier 3 data centers. So this is important. When Wasabi first started out, people thought we were a scam. They thought that we were storing things in S3 and being a reseller of it. We had to show proof that we actually had data centers, and we focused on really, really intensive data centers. We started off with tier 3 data centers, which is multiple redundancies in every part, including power, networking, security systems, fire suppression. You learn every single part about this when you get into the data center world. So it's important to have that. And then compliance. So it was touched upon in the last presentation too, but compliance is key. Enterprises want to know that you're not some fly-by-night operation. They want to know that you're secure, you are following all the related standards. If you get any RFPs, requests for proposals, they're going to have checkboxes here. Are you HIPAA? Are you high trust? Are you FERPA, depending on the vertical? And if you don't meet those requirements, instant out.
For the bullet before, how did you prove to people that you're actually running these tier 3 data centers? Because some people want to see rent receipts or purchase invoices and stuff. What was your actual mechanism of showing that?
That's the question. We had arrangements with our data centers to get their SOC 2 documentation, which they actually don't have available online. So if you give that to the customer and say, hey, we actually have their SOC 2 documentation and details signed by the chief security officer, then you're pretty good. But again, for most customers that come in, naturally they don't do that, but it's more for the larger enterprise, customers, or like if someone's working with the BDR. Yep. So compliance important. Availability zones. That's a fun fact. Availability zones. Microsoft, Amazon S3. Amazon S3 has 3 availability zones by default. All US 1, Ashburn, Virginia, spread across data centers. It makes them feel safe, makes everyone feel safe, and ensures 11.9 of durability. And then dedicated networking bandwidth. So again, this is a point that becomes important. We talked about before about getting data in the system. I had a memory before when Wasabi first started at one of our largest customers to get our first 2 petabytes. We acquired us to do multiple seedings of hard drives there to get them out the door because at the time, way back in the 2017, everyone thought 1 gigabit per second was a perfect amount of bandwidth they need to upload into the cloud. And hopefully that's changing now, so it's a little bit easier to get the petabytes up the door. So yeah, how do you do that for Web3? Well, you need to have the same durability, array trace coding, and sophisticated data centers. I touched upon that before. You can have encryption encrypted to other SPs, and that can make them happy. But a lot of people in Web 2.0 don't really understand that in terms of all the nuances with it. When you talk to a person in Web 2.0, they think decentralized, it means that I have it on my laptop, you have it on your laptop. They need a lot of assurances that the customer's data is secure. So like I said about the SOC 2 for us, it's good to have examples of for your other customers, to your other SPs, in terms of this is what they're doing, and make it more as transparent as possible so that they understand that their data is secure in secure data centers and not just stored in some server farm in a place outside of their geolocation.
So Wasabi is verifying data every 90 days, right? Or you're running cryptographic hashes at or something to verify the data still consistent. You're doing it right on the website. My question is actually considering in the protocol it's done on a daily basis, is that a valid prop that you can sell and differentiate with, or do customers not really care that much because they're just relying on you as a brand? And the same question for durability: is there a world where customers will just be okay with 6 nines, 7 nines, 8 nines? Is this something we should play with because it has sort of become the standard? But do customers really care?
Yeah, so durability is kind of like a influx thing when it comes to that. When Wasabi launched, it was only 1 availability zone. That was our key differentiator. That's how we made prices so cheap. And customers were at first hesitant about it, but then realized that for their use cases, secondary copies, archival copies, that was our bread and butter there. They're very happy with that. So they can take that increased risk of durability and availability to achieve that. The second part of it, what was the other part about that? I'm sorry.
So the second one was actually the frequency at which the data gets verified, because one of the unique differentiators of Filecoin is that the protocol checks it every single day. Other solutions don't do that because it's extremely expensive to go through all your billions of objects on a daily basis. And so the way we
I would say that's a developing feature requirement. When we first launched, no one really cared as much about security and compliance. They care about compliance and care as much about security and proof of that for some method to users. As it gets, further and further on, it's becoming more and more important. It comes of, I've talked about proof of provenance, proof that the actual data is secure and has integrity. Wasabi achieved a lot of that goals through having a, like good marketing and solid demonstration of the storage capabilities there, and deep dives in engineering stack when people asked about it. But yeah. When it comes into those requirements, I think it gets more and more important as we progress, and having some kind of solution there, especially now that companies are putting focus into security in terms of chief security officers and the whole security divisions, especially when you scale up to enterprise, that becomes more and more important, and probably a gatekeeper to actually making the deal. Yeah, so same durability, increased availability, IPFS pinning. I talked about a little bit availability zones on steroids. So like, customers ECS3 and they know about hopefully they know about the availability zones, but with IPFS pinning, there's potentiality to have the equivalent of much more powerful availability zones, more hyper localization, which I'll get into later too. And then distributed for just bandwidth. Partnerships are key for both. Yeah, and the reason I said that was, talking about SPs and the compliance and making sure that everyone, is following the right standards and approvals. So disaster recovery use case. This is a pretty straightforward one. There are 3 examples. Usually I like to do 3 dots, but enterprise seeking to fulfill its RTO and RPO business continuity requirements. This is it in a nutshell. I'm an enterprise, and I have a chief security officer, and I need to have a business continuity plan. A lot of compliances actually require that. HIPAA does. I was a chief privacy officer too at Wasabi. That's a fun gig to do. But yeah, you have to have a business continuity of like all your run the business technologies. You need to have a plan of attack and mitigation circumstances for this, so that in case their data center dissolves, there's like maybe a geopolitical turmoil, things like that. You need to have a solution that you can actually have the shortened amount of time to actually get back and running, and have a recovery point objective, which is the point where you can still be a viable business and be successful, especially where data is at a right point. So this one is very similar to the application one. It's very difficult to do for a lot of hot storage providers because it's very high, extremely high durability again, and only moderate availability this time because you're not running production level data here, and that's important. That if a company isn't running their production data on there, they have a lot more tolerance when it comes to availability. If your networking is down, or you're doing improvements to it, as all startups are. We don't have 30 years of experience. We don't have thousands of teams. Sometimes things go down, and they can deal with it. So it inevitably becomes a better customer. But then there becomes the harder part, which is the extremely high bandwidth. And this is a thing we've talked about before in terms of if you have a bunch of companies running as business business continuity, and all of a sudden if you don't have the right bandwidth for it and multiple customers you don't want to immediately deploy and get things up and running, it becomes very difficult, especially if for third-party software, third-party clouds such as us, where you have to connect to Amazon AWS or GCP or even local compute to have that connection right there to have things up and running and deliver the bandwidth. So
Yeah, that was the case with SunGuard and 9/11. Because a lot of the financial companies in Manhattan were at SunGuard, and they wanted to restore.
Yep.
And all the requests came in at the same time, and not a chance.
No.
Of getting that data. It was like barely a trickle.
If only there was some kind of decentralized solution at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, so durability here actually gets decreased. Durability for tiers is 1 to 4, 4 being the best. Tier 2 data centers, you don't need to have the redundant power. I think it's redundant power, yeah. Oh, it says right there on my board, look at that.
Yeah.
Good job, past Richard. And governance modes. Governance modes are important here. When Wasabi first started, there really wasn't a governance mode in S3. We had to develop our own thing, and unfortunately, Amazon built their own one, which we had to change route and accommodate that instead. But governance modes are very important when it comes to these things. Going back to what you said in terms of proof of the data being secure, this also goes into proof of tampering and also proof of the data actually being prevented from bad actors. Because from my experiences also prior to this at at Carbonite, the worst bad actor is the people inside the company, clicking on a phishing email link, and all of a sudden you have a BitLocker on there, and then you lose all your data. So, and also, of course, the disgruntled employee that before he goes out, he seems to have access to every single system. So things happen. So governance modes are important for this in ways to restrict the customer from hurting itself. And then availability, proximity to compute. Again, we talked about that before. Being proximity to compute is really important for business continuity. Not so much for backup, but definitely for compute. And then finally, region-to-region replication. So yeah, if you look at AWS, they say for a business continuity solution, we can actually move from this region to another region, because a lot of business continuity systems and things document that, let's say a nuclear bomb hit, Washington, D.C. How would we be able to, get things going to the next place there? So being able to transfer across country in case of these large threats to us seem like impossible. To them, seem real and something that they need to account for at any given moment. So yeah, so how do you compare that to a Web3 solution? How do you improve upon that? So durability, all same features Web 2.0, erasure coding, stability, and all that. Filecoin for verification, mutability, availability. So this is something I think is really important for the Filecoin network. Something that you need to leverage more in terms of having that independent blockchain consensus and proof that the files are immutable, the files are untouched, and the files are available. This is something that it's hard for third-party cloud providers, especially in this day and age where a lot of people compete with Amazon and Google, and they don't really want to trust them with all their data, assurances that, we trust us, I'm sure Borders trusted Amazon back in the day, and see what happened there. Finally, availability, IPFS. So yeah, I mean, no region replication. You need region replication. Your data is in every region possible. There's no complicated orchestration. It's distributed orchestration so that you can get to go around rolling. Finally, my favorite, archival use case. There's two kind of tracks to this. There's a very compliant-focused one. I give an example here. Legal department needing to store all their documents for a future audit. That's just one vertical. I mean, legal is one. Healthcare is another fantastic one. Financial, less so, because then you have to be FINRA compliant, and you do not want to be FINRA compliant. It's very difficult. And the other one is like a typical enterprise oil company, storing extreme detail mapping of the ocean floor. A lot of these companies here, I give that example because I always love it. The fact that, they do these extensive mapping operations and they track every single detail that even their algorithms and their systems actually can't use to make predictions of where oil is. But in the future they will be able to. So they store the data now because it's very expensive to get to actually get the information. So storing is very important for those use cases. So that in the future, when they have more sophisticated knowledge of how to access it, they can. So yeah, so for this one, durability, paramount. Durability, there's a pattern, as you see here. 11.9's durability, everyone needs that. No one can ever tolerate data being missing. Nothing's worse than being a cloud provider and saying, oh, sorry, we don't have your data, we lied to you. Availability, slow retrieval, high bandwidth. So yeah, the thing about this is availability really depends on the use case here, and this is the hardest part to track and to target because some archival use cases is a couple seconds is fine. Hours is great. Even days sometimes is very successful for a lot of companies if they understand that they're getting a good deal, and for multiple petabytes, or even it might even fit into their workflow in terms of auditing. They like that delay to get things in order, get things ready for it. They actually be presentable. But again, here, proximity to computer is important because you have the archival data, you got it, you actually want to use it. You're not just storing it and then forgetting about it. You actually probably want to be near a computer. So yeah, so is that durability same as disaster recovery, availability, large regional network. And this is important here is that you're entering a new market such as where Web 2.0 is just look at Amazon's map. They have regions everywhere. Every single, east, west, central, Asia. It's really hard to compete with them if they already have that gigantic map that anywhere you're close to. Not only will it be close to you in terms of latency, it'll also be close to you in terms of compute because everywhere they have storage, you have compute, and then that's what you're looking for. They keep you in there, and you don't want to leave. So yeah, how do you achieve that Web 3.0? So durability, all the, again, same 11.9s, but when it comes to availability, hyper-local regionalization. So this is the point here. I think that's really important when it comes to Web 3 underutilized is that, so sure, Amazon has US 1, US 2, US 3, but with our abilities and with enough storage providers across the world, we can have 3,000 storage providers. We can have 3,000 data centers here. I mean, instantly become the fourth largest storage provider by having that. That no matter where you are in the world, there is a close data center to you which you can get the access information about it. It's just a matter of orchestrating that and making the deals across that so everyone can actually utilize that. And then the other part is compute over cloud, and this is the part I'm most new about in terms of the crypto world. I know that the work we've been done for compute over cloud, FVM, and all that. So I think there's a lot of potentialities in there to really make a difference in terms of competing with the hyperscalers. So how can we improve? I didn't mention retrievals key is the last thing. I mentioned that before too, but retrievals is the most important part when it comes to dealing with these large enterprises here. Working with Wasabi and we go to launch, the way we were successful is that we could actually prove that the data was there and accessible, like we said before. Having it data uploaded, even though we had a file upload in there and most people utilize API, having the UI to actually upload the data and confirm that data is stored and press a button to download and retrieve it back. They might do 1 or 2 files and they'll be happy with that, and then as a result of that, they'll upload petabytes. So it's important to have the retrievals key, no matter what how large or small the file. So guaranteeing a proper SLA for that is important for a company such as ours, so that we can assume that Filecoin, just same as any storage provider, that if we store your data, we can get the data back and make the customer happy. RIGOR stands for SPs. Yeah, again. Compliance data center requirements I think are important. It doesn't have to be as written blood, but some kind of a group that vets storage providers and gives thumbs up in terms of auditing. It would be a great way to improve upon this organization. And then compute over cloud. Finding the closed ecosystem. I think it's really important for us going forward. Especially our capital use case, to have a proper compute over cloud environment so that people can actually utilize the data, not just set it and forget it. So that's what I got.
I was wondering how often data sovereignty came into play for you, where you were dealing with use cases where their data had to reside within a specific region, and because that could become a complexity with SPs. Oh yeah. I mean that's always a huge issue. Now, I think now more than it was back then. But we really targeted with all our marketing and messaging everything in English, and we were American data center, so it was really easy to get to America. When we branched out to Europe, it became more of a focus when having dedicated EMA and having our system being more scaled out to so the data is stored there. It's definitely an issue. Like nowadays, I would say, of course. If you said for an American company your data is stored in Asia, a lot of alarm bells ring up, and you need to have a conversation about it.
Use cases. You were saying that you had 2 use cases there. One was legal hold, basically. That market is very controlled by a few players, software players. What would be your recommendation to go after that market?
It's an interesting question. There's a lot of when it comes to these things, like when it comes to legal hold, like I said, there are a lot of competitors, and there are actually a lot of SaaS platforms that actually make hold of that. But companies get a little bit reversed about buying more and more platforms. And sure, for a lot of larger companies, enterprise, it makes sense to actually have buy the software. When it comes to the smaller law firms and things like that, where it comes to companies just starting out, they don't really want to splurge for the comprehensive work. So it's important there just to have the features and functionality necessary to check the boxes with their typical storage providers such as Seal. Thank you.